We're live now. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Five Stack. Look at what we have got here. The amazing Lev Parnas has found his way to Brighton Beach's like central business district. This is where he grew up. Lev, what are you seeing? What are you feeling as you're seeing all this incredible memories?
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, first of all, just to be back here feels great. It's a lot different than it was when I was growing up. I mean, a lot of it has changed and it's now more Americanized, and but you can still feel and you can still see the authentic, like, if you look at, like, just for instance, you can see the different foods.
You know, the audio is going to keep cutting out a little bit here, I suspect, because it's just the nature of the cell system there. Just to explain to you why Dean Blundell is not here, because he's still on vacation, and Lev jumped in to do the show, and he happens to be in Brighton Beach, which is where you grew up, because you were born in Ukraine, but then grew up in these fine streets.
I grew up exactly right in these streets as you see, and this is like even in my book that I write about it, everything that started here. I mean, this is primarily, I mean, not just me, but a lot of the people that, like even older grew up here, older, and this is where we all immigrated as from in the 1970s and 80s as prosecuted Jews from the Soviet Union. And this is like where we came to.
You know, Olga was just on with me an hour ago, and she was describing it as being, certainly very different now. She hasn't been back for a long time, but when you think back to what is this, the 70s, 80s, 90s, this was also a Trump territory, wasn't it? I mean, this is where Donald Trump's father built a lot of apartment buildings, and a lot of the immigrants from the Soviet Union would actually live
Well,
in this neighborhood.
actually, right down there, if you go further down and then to the right, I don't know if I'm going to make it down there. I'm going to try to show you the Trump Towers are still there. This is where I actually worked for Fred Trump down there and sold co-ops back in when I was 15 years old.
Oh, wow.
Trump had a very big presence. They still do. Their name is still on a lot of the co-ops and the buildings around here.
That elevated bridge above you, that's for the subway system, isn't it?
Yep, that's the famous subway system. Yeah, that goes from there, goes down there towards Coney Island, famous Luna Park, and then down there, that's Brighton Beach.
Is Coney Island still there? It's still sort of completely.
Like you can even see it's written in Russian.
Yeah, look at that. So there's
It's
still a lot of Russian. Is there still a
pharmacy.
big Russian community in the neighborhood there?
Oh, huge. I mean, it's primarily, I mean, nothing changed. It's just that they tried to Americanize.
Yeah.
So, we lost our authenticity. You have a lot of now Russian restaurants that serve French food, Italian food, Eurasian food, instead of, it's difficult to find, the authentic stuff. But they're still here. You can see it in the cracks.
Do you? Is this mainly Trump territory? Or is this pretty much a Democratic territory still?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's the Russian population, units of the Ukrainian population were heavy Trump. So it's interesting to see that But now I think with what's transpiring and the way Trump's been handling, especially the war and some of the other promises that he made, I think people are starting to realize a lot of these communities, that he didn't keep his promise or keep his word. But primarily, they were heavy Trump. Yeah, I would say they were heavy Trump.
You know, as you mentioned the talks, Ed, I'll just talk a little bit about what's going on in the news, because we were trying to do that on the show. But if you see anything or want to discuss anything as you come across it, is like a good thing, just interrupt me. But there was some developments today about the peace talks, or supposed peace talks, between Trump and Putin. Putin came out first with a readout after a 2-hour call, and then Trump had his readout afterwards. They concur that they're going to have more negotiations about a ceasefire. And, this time it'll be around a memorandum. But basically, there's nothing new here, Lev, is there? I mean, it sounds like more of the same, more delays, more negotiations about nothing.
Oh, it's exactly what we've been talking about, what I've been talking about. I know you and Olga have been saying. I mean, we've been saying this, screaming at top of our lungs that this is just optics, delay tactics. This was all pre-planned. If you take a look at the conversation, they spoke about another prisoner swap. They spoke about all kinds of stuff, but they didn't speak about actual.
Your audio cut out there, so I'll wait for you to reconnect, and hopefully it will in a second. Someone just wrote, there you are, I think you're back now.
No, you can.
I didn't. Still cutting out a little bit. So
Oh, okay.
um, now you're back. You're back. I think I can hear you now.
All right.
Go ahead.
I'm
You
actually
took.
taking you guys now to show you the real beauty of the Brighton beaches where we settled by the ocean.
Ah,
I'm going to take you over there right now to the boardwalk.
this boardwalk is
But
so famous, right?
yeah,
We can wait to talk about that, but it's well known for many people who know the Trump not Russian narrative. This boardwalk is sort of the central. It's almost like a character in the
yeah.
in that whole story because so much was going on along that boardwalk.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and just the history of it. I mean, you have the Coney Island boardwalk that's connected to it, the Italian aspect of it, the Russian aspect of it. There's just so much history over here.
Someone was saying that this is also a Jewish community, that this area is known as for its
Yes,
Jews. So how does that,
yes.
is it Russian Jews and Ukrainian Jews, or how does it?
The beauty of Brighton Beach is it was just a mixture of everything. You have Jews, Catholic, Christians, Russians, Uzbeki, Kazakh, and but we all related as ones. But back then it didn't matter where you came from, where you were. You consider we spoke the same language, and we all were the same. Now it's all obviously separated.
Right, but it was a real like melting pot for a lot of immigrants that came to the United States, and obviously they came to live the American dream. I mean, that was the reason so many people left the Soviet Union to come to America to live the American dream, and many of them did.
Yeah, I mean, they still do. I mean, it's still a melting pot. I mean, you still have everything you could imagine. It's just it was a lot different back then. I could it's just it's changed, but I guess that you change with the times. But I
I
mean,
want
going
to,
back to
yeah,
Trump, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
I just want to get your reaction as you first see this. You turn the corner here because this is you're
Yeah,
getting to the beach, right?
yeah, we're getting close to it.
Uh,
Yeah. And that remember the restaurant you asked me? That's the restaurant that's still here at Tatiana's.
Oh yeah, Tatiana's is very famous. Also features in some of the big stories around Trump Russia in the early days. Wow, this is great that you're taking us on this trip here. What are you feeling as you walk down this sort of walking down memory lane?
I mean, it's kind of surreal. It's cool. It's always been home, so it's not like it's something extremely different. But the difference is definitely seeing a lot of changes. I haven't been here for a while with my arrest, my being imprisonment, not being able to travel. So I see a lot of differences, but otherwise it's pretty cool.
You've traveled a long path, and if emotionally and even politically, you've certainly changed a lot. Do you? As you reflect back on a lifetime of change here, is it all gone the way you wanted to go? Did you expect any of this to happen? Look at that beautiful view.
Oh,
Wow.
nice. Absolutely not none of it. I mean,
Yeah.
if you take a look at it, and I mean, if you watch my documentary, I mean, just
Mm.
a couple of parts of my life would have been crazy, but the things that I've experienced, it's not even. I just say thank you to God that I'm still alive, that I have my family, that I have my health, and that I'm able to now do something good, contribute, and try to save our democracy.
It is incredible your transition from being sort of a real confidant of the Trumps to someone who's really working overtime all the time. I see your stuff on Substack, consistently working so hard to defend democracy. We had is that something that is there any regrets in that? Do you ever feel like um, you know, is there any regrets about having to make that shift that you could have had this very different ride along with Trump?
It's a great question because after Trump won the second time, I got a lot of calls from people inside Trump world that were like, "Oh, you see, you should have just waited a little longer," or "Oh, why don't you? You could get back into his good graces." And I
Yeah.
thought about that. I said, it was never about that. I mean, it was about right or wrong. And I even when I was with Trump, as crazy as it sounds, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping save our democracy. And,
Hmm.
when I realized that it wasn't the case. And, at that point, I tried to do the right thing again, at this time, being on the right side of history, obviously.
That's really important. Over the weekend, and we learned about Joe Biden and his cancer diagnosis. And when I was realized that you were on the show today, it made me connect the dots between what was your operation to really malign Joe Biden, or you were part of that operation at least, and how this was also an operation. This whole idea of making Joe Biden, age be a factor, his cognitive skills be a factor. That was part of an operation, in my opinion. I don't know if you concur, but I think that we basically had a full-on operation to make Joe Biden, seem much older and more incompetent than he was. Clearly now we have a new reflection on that because we know that he was probably suffering from the early stages of this severe cancer. But what's your thoughts about how that played into the election and from someone who's been on the inside of these operations?
I'll tell you first off, my prayers and wishes to the Biden
Mm-hmm.
family. No matter what politics, no matter what goes on. I mean, this was the president of the United States. I also feel that the timing is a little bit off. I mean, the man is sick, and right now, I think we should unite around him and to make sure that he tries to beat this monster because cancer is something that touches a lot of people. It's something that it's something we should unite around. And as far as look, I've said it all along. I said Democrats, Republicans, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings. People do stuff on different sides. And I also said that there'll come a time and a place when we are going to talk about how the Democratic Party and the leaders let down the American public and allowed us to be in a place where we are today, dealing with Donald Trump and sitting here and talking and trying to join forces. So I just feel, personally, I don't think today is the time, and maybe not now is the time. I think it will come. There will be a time, but right now, I think we need to join forces and hope that he recovers health-wise, and B, that we could, save our democracy from Trump and the people that he has around him. And then, I think we'll be able to get back to normalcy and going over how we got here, who was what, and because I think there's a lot that has to be taught, not just about what Joe Biden, but there's a lot of other people in the Democratic leadership that I believe we could talk about, but I just choose not to at this time.
You have been critical of them too, and that's good. Last time we were on, you also spoke about wanting to sort of flip the house. You had this great strategy idea of finding a way to flip the four. Is it just four? I think mainly
No,
Democrats.
it's about six, and it's been doing great. I mean, I
Mm.
don't know if you guys see Don Bacon on the weekend shows. Basically, he's already flipped. Bacon's already on our side. Fitzpatrick is more or less there. Valedo's. I spoke to Congressman Rocana. He said Valedo's is pretty much there. There's another. We need to find another two, three. It's getting, with the Qatar trip and with the jet and some of the stuff. I think we'll be getting them very short. We're getting close. We're getting close.
It does seem like we might be getting closer. I saw Hakeem Jeffries even talking about that the other day, about talking about we just need 4 votes really to get to sink this bill, this big beautiful
Yep.
bill or whatever they're calling it.
Yep.
That would be a big indicator that the House is flippable, even at this early stage. Do you you mentioned the Qatar airplane thing. I found out this weekend that this thing was already on the market before, that they basically were trying to ditch this thing. And yet, and they were looking for someone to pick it up for a while. No one wanted to because it's so expensive to maintain. And so even though Trump's out there saying, hey, they're giving me this big, beautiful plane, it's not a big, beautiful plane. It's a big, beautiful, expensive plane that is going to cost us a fortune to operate. And they've been trying to offload it. And you were the sucker, basically, Donald Trump. They went and picked it up.
That's the crazy part. Just like what you said, you're the sucker. There's
Yeah.
actually a quote from a dealer, a plane dealer, going back, I think, to 2000, whatever, 7, 8 years ago, saying, "I can't wait to see the sucker because they're never going to be able to sell this plane. Can't wait to see the sucker that they're going to gift it to."
That's great. That's great. I mean, it really is that. It's amazing to me that this, what else did he give away on that trip to the Middle East? He seems like he has given away a lot of things.
And that's why I talk about the core part. I think that we all concentrate on. I think as we say about follow, when you follow money, it's not what they report; it's what they don't report. It's what you didn't see. Yes, we saw him sign the R4 holding long airplanes. We saw him sign deal in Saudi Arabia that they're giving 600, billion dollars. Didn't you see? Didn't see.
You're cutting out a little bit now. I'm having a hard
Oh,
time hearing you. So I'm just going to,
I said, yeah,
that's
I
better.
said
That's
you.
better.
Is that right? I said
Yeah.
you didn't see the week or two before that when Don Jr. and Eric were in the Middle East doing their crypto deals or doing their whatever real estate deals. So you didn't see all the other people that work with Trump on Air Force One or have went there alongside of him cutting business deals while Trump is there, tag along. Because that's
Right.
where the real deals are being done, That's not Trump. Trump is the face. He just, he wants to give a press release. He wants to say, "Oh, look, I signed all these deals for Boeing." And that's what he wants the media to write about. But what you don't see is all those deals and the money and all the shady stuff that was being done by all those different mega supporters, loyalists, or people that paid millions and millions of dollars to be there,
Mhm.
to be able to have the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And in the semiconductor space, I think he made a deal with the UAE that he's actually, really hurts America at the end of the day. If we give them all these semiconductors, we don't know where they're going to land up. They could land up in China, which has been a concern around those semiconductors. So, it's still unclear that what he did on that trip is actually beneficial to the United States in any way at all.
Well, it wasn't. It was beneficial to Donald Trump and the Trump family. That's who was it definitely beneficial to. Just like this whole thing with Ukraine, if you take a look at it, just think about the statements that he's made in the past, like 72 hours about the difference. From we need the peace talks. I'm going to stop it. Only I could stop it. Witkoff came out and said, "Oh, once Trump speaks to Putin, it'll all be all done, all good." And today they spoke about for 2 hours and they didn't even discuss even talk about a ceasefire. I mean, I'm laughing, but it's sad. It's really crazy and
Yeah,
sad because in the meantime, just yesterday, Putin unloaded one of the biggest, if not the biggest, since 2022 when the war started. I mean, aerial
200,
attack.
273 drone attacks last night.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
person died. I mean, it's terrifying that this is just going to continue as these guys play this game of, pulling the wool over the American people, because this is really not happening. There is no negotiation that's really going to impact an actual ceasefire. It doesn't look like.
well, I've always said, they can't have a ceasefire because Putin can't stop the war. He needs
Yeah.
he needs to, for several reasons. A, he wants to take over Ukraine. I mean, he wants to unite the old Soviet Union. He wants to go into Europe. I mean, that's what Putin wants. That's not. Two, he's already built a machine. The economy is based off of all war machine. He can't flip it back. And three, he has close to 1 million people out there that he's let out of prison, that are out there maimed, hurt, psychologically messed up, that he does not want to take back into society. The economy is already in shit. So there's no way he's going to stop. But these are all delay tactics.
Hmm. Tell me more about this neighborhood you're walking through right now. I just want to
Oh,
describe what you're
uh,
seeing. I just want to
uh,
see and hear
uh, all right, let me
your,
flip it around.
yeah, 'cause it's really a great treat to see it through your eyes.
So this is literally the enclave, Brighton Beach neighborhood. This is the buildings that we grew up in. They're all about 6 stories. Um, and yeah, I mean,
How many
this is the
people lived
streets.
in one of these buildings? How dense was the
Let's
was the
see.
population there?
Probably would have, if you have six. Yeah, so if you had probably, let's say, 20 apartments, 6 floors on 20 apartments, you'd have close to, between 600 to 1,000 people.
Wow. And this is criticized by some people, the sort of brown architecture as being a bit like depressing and not that exciting, but it actually looks, it's held up over time quite well.
Incredible. I'm just like watching it compared to all the new structures that's being built up around here right now. It's amazing to see that's really holy.
Yeah,
And if you can't imagine inside how they've redone it. These are, you gotta understand, you're looking at $1 million apartments here, folks. This is not
really.
this. Oh, this is, yeah. This is Brighton Beach is not the same Brighton Beach, and you're like on the ocean now.
Yeah,
Really,
right. It's
prime
waterfront
time real
property.
estate.
Do people
Absolutely.
people own or do they rent mostly in this neighborhood?
A lot usually, well, this is the interesting. A lot of this turned into co-ops.
Hmm.
This is how Trump also back in the late '80s and '90s, they turned into co-ops, condos. But there's still a huge rental community here. Huge.
Was Trump's father actually responsible for this? A lot of these buildings. I mean, it seems like that's the case.
Not these buildings in
Hmm.
particular,
Okay.
but further up there, yes, actually even taller. His buildings were pretty taller at Trump Tower over there. They were 20
There's
foot.
there was a famous hangout that sort of the mobsters used to hang out in. I don't remember the name right now, but there was Tatiana's
And
is one
that's
of them, but there was another place as well, owned
on
by
Brighton Beach.
Michael. Yeah, wasn't it Michael Cohen's
Oh no,
uncle
that
or
was
something
on
owned it. Who
that
owned it?
that that wasn't on Brighton Beach. That was actually called the El Carib.
Yes, yeah.
It was a catering hall. Yeah, it was the home to the five Italian families, and also Murad Balagula, who was the he had his offices there. Who was the godfather of the Russian
So
organized crime.
there was five big Italian families, the Cosa Nostra, right? And that was the main families that were in the mob at the time. And then the Russians arrived, and that sort of changed things. Can you? What's your view of how all that went down?
Well, I mean, there was a lot that went down. It
Yeah,
was
sure.
there was a lot of history, but basically, the Russians came in, and at first there was a lot of tension, just like in anywhere, because they were taking over rackets that the Italians ran forever. But then, where they started joining forces with the Russians came with crazy business ideas of how to, Medicaid fraud, tax fraud, all these different huge billion-dollar fraud schemes were because a lot of the Russians were not really gangsters, but they were mathematicians. They weren't just gangsters, and the Italians used that to be able to, you know, uh, join forces. And eventually, that's how the Russians, got their own respect.
So they basically introduced this whole new kind of, these schemes basically that the mobsters could make money off without having to actually do some of the dirty crimes on the streets.
Well, yeah, just think about it. It's like say the old Italian way of making money was, shylighting either, the rackets for protection. So how much can you make for, 10% or whatever I'm saying to taking from a person in the street? Here, the Russians turned them on to $1 billion tax schemes,
Mhm.
$1 billion Medicaid fraud. I mean, where you're talking about some of these, Italian families. That's why you started seeing even people turning because they started making so much money they wanted to start enjoying it and living it. They didn't want to go to prison for 20 years.
And that also changed New York. I mean, you're what, a half an hour outside of Manhattan, right? So, um,
Yeah.
but the whole city changed because of the arrival of Russian and Ukrainians. It cleaned up New York for one thing, because I guess there was more money and there was also more attention to what the streets looked like during that time. Um, it's this was a major economic force that changed America. The arrival of the immigrants from the Soviet Union to Brighton Beach.
No, big time. Absolutely. From a lot of different angles, I agree with you. I mean, it was a force from economical to cultural to, and look, time is shown, even today, it's this country is involved with somehow the president of the United States. We've come from Brighton Beach to the White House.
I mean, seriously, that is a big deal. How did when you think about it, you grew up on these streets, and you've got now the president of the United States was also involved in those streets. I mean, he wasn't really living there, but you know, can you believe that he is now in the White House and the people surrounding him? So many guys from Brighton Beach. Like it's a small group of people ultimately that supported him, and at least in the initial stages, and there's still some of them with him today.
Well, the crazy part is it's the ones that you don't see that again I keep saying is the important part. The guys you see, you don't really see anybody, but the guys that you don't see, the people that are spending the $5 million for these gold cards that Lutman keeps talking about,
Right.
I want to see who these people are. Those those are the ones you want to see who are around him because there's a lot happening behind the scenes right now, and that's why we gotta keep maintaining, keep the focus on, and that's why it's so important for every single one of you in this community, in this movement, to support us and do what you do. Because believe me, it's it's only going to get, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It's going to get worse before it gets better because this guy is out for not only vengeance and revenge, but he's figured out that he has certain power that's not being controlled or being held accountable for.
It's so interesting because I looked at what this Biden story and why it's so making such impact right now. It's one of those things that they're using to it really hurts to suppress dissent. They're trying to crush this idea that Democrats or democracy can have people stand up for it and challenge this government. So by painting the Democrats as just more criminals, just like they are, they sort of are taking away the notion that there's an alternative that might be better. So they're sort of crushing the hopes and dreams of any potential movement by amplifying the story around around Biden. I'm not saying that Biden wasn't ill or wasn't having
Well, I
difficulty. Of
mean,
course he was, but the
absolutely.
timing right now seems very
Well,
has an objective.
there's more, of course. The objective is what people don't understand is, and it's not making the news. But I'm hearing that he's actually having the pardon attorney look into those pardons, trying to throw out the Biden pardons.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
Ed Martin, by the way, who's the pardon attorney. I've discovered today. He declared himself that. In his new
yeah.
job, he's now going to look at all these pardons. I mean,
So, and that's why this narrative of Biden not being all there and all of this fits into that, exactly, and I remember telling that when Trump first mentioned it over a month and a half ago, I said, this is where we're going, because with the way Trump does it, he mentions it, he starts it, and then he gets there, he gives it time to sink in. And that,
so
by the
what does
way,
that mean
Zeb,
for? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
well, no, I was gonna say I'm gonna take you guys on a special. This is to show you what a store supermarket looks like in
Oh,
Little Odessa. This
oh
is a
my
real
God,
treat because you're gonna see stuff that you see all over the world. So this is a nice treat. So
that's exciting. Let's take a look.
but we could talk while I'm going.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the Hunter Biden thing. Obviously, you were involved in that. In a lot of that story. Would you think his pardon is going to get rescinded?
I mean, it's not just Hunter Biden. I mean, there's other
Mm.
people there. But I think that definitely is being looked at. And as far as this is all like marinated
Wow, looks delicious.
vegetables.
I've been to Tatiana's once, and I had lunch there, and I couldn't believe the amount of food on every table and how much they brought out over and over again, and so delicious. So much of this food. Wow, look at all that.
I'm getting hungry just sitting here showing you guys this.
What's your favorite local food, local meal that you love to have?
It's just so much. There's no one favorite. It's just that's actually being able to enjoy, several days of that type of food.
Yeah. It's not. It's hard to digest that food sometimes, and also not always good for you. It's always fatty, kind of hard
Look
to.
at this is beef tongue.
Oh yeah, beef tongue.
Yeah,
Look at that. What does that taste like?
It tastes delicious, actually.
Beef
It's like
tongue.
beef. It's like,
I'll
yeah.
try it one day. That's for sure. It does make you hungry looking at all this yummy stuff. Wow. Someone's mentioning goulash. And do you like what's that purple drink that people have? It's like a purple juice, I guess. I don't know. It's like not borscht. Borscht? Is that how you say it?
Borscht. Yeah, borscht is the soups. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, look at this is a big store, and this is modeled after stores in Odessa.
And Moscow and Odessa and Russia, it's just, and they're enormous. It's like the variety of, you could get anything from around the world, from fishes, caviar, I mean, you name it.
And so some of this food obviously comes from Russia directly still, right? Is that true?
Yep, some of it comes from Russia, comes from all over the world. That's why we think the competition is so extreme that if you have several of these. It's not like one of these restaurants. I mean, one of these stores here. We have plenty of them. It's baby lamb.
Oh, wow. Well, that food. Wow, it's incredible. None of it's going to get affected by tariffs necessarily, because some of it is, Russia doesn't get tariffed as much as the others. But for many people, their prices are beginning to go up in their grocery bills, and people project that in the next few months we'll see a lot more inflation related to the tariffs. That's going to have an impact, obviously, on people's, like, as you point out, this movement that's building is if people's, grocery bills go up.
Oh, 100%. Here they're making that. This is really food. It's a good. This is my dad.
I couldn't hear what you're saying there. Say that again.
This is actually like Middle Eastern, like from Uzbekistan.
Okay. So it really is like a melting pot of all this, of all these cultures that moved there, and they all share a supermarket. It's very much like a metaphor for America.
Yeah, absolutely. Zeb, I have to actually.
I know you have to go.
I have to go, and then maybe we can do it tonight and Sunday. But I want to.
We can I'll
Yeah, go
text
ahead.
you. I'll text you and I will figure it out because I'm having a hard time hearing you. But I want to thank you so much, Lev. What a great treat. I really appreciate you being such a good sport and showing us around Brighton Beach. Amazing.
Thank you for having me, Zev. And I think that besides all this greatness that we speak about, I think there's a lot of serious stuff happening, and that's why it's more important than ever that every single one of you continue doing and supporting what you guys are doing, because it's without you, this movement, this platform wouldn't mean anything, and we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And we're going to continue, right, Jeff? We're going to continue doing
Absolutely going to
speaking truth to
continue.
power, and we're going to bring the facts in. So thank you for all of you subscribers out there. Those of you that haven't subscribed yet, make sure you become subscribers. And those of you that are paid subscribers, God bless all of you. Thank you so much, Zev. Talk to you later,
Thank you so
guys.
much. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. Isn't that great? Lev Parnas live from Brighton Beach. I love seeing that. That's awesome. Because, you rarely get a first person perspective of their hometown and the way they grew up. And to hear Lev describe the stories and his own transition, and to hear him at the end saying what he said about how important this movement to stop Donald Trump is so important, because every single one of you is part of that movement, and it's going to get tougher. It's going to get harder to do what we need to do. But the more we connect, the more we hear these stories, the more we understand how someone like Lev Parnas went through such an incredible transition. I mean, he went from being inside Donald Trump's inner circle to being an a pro-democracy activist in the way that he has, speaks volumes about this person's character, that this person has been able to change. It also says a lot about how much we can all change and America can change. There is no doubt that once the truth is out there, and more of the truth is out there, which is what we do here at Narrative and what Lev does on his Substack, is try and get as much of the truth out as possible. And Lev is such a asset for everybody, because he knows exactly what Trump is doing, because he was on the inside. He knows exactly, the schemes and the way Trump thinks, and he could take us through that every time he analyzes a story, which is just awesome. There's a couple of news stories we were going to mention today on the tracker. I'm going to quickly mention them because they're important stories as well. We already touched on the negotiations between Vladimir Putin and Trump and the 2-hour phone call today. But I want to mention a few other stories because this one's really interesting. There's a former Palantir employee named Anthony Jansko, who's previously worked for Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, that's DOGE. Now, what his new job is to hire AI agents, or developers to hire AI agents, artificial intelligence agents. And what Musk is doing through this new recruiter is they're going to basically replace 70,000 federal employees. 70,000 federal employees with these 300 roles that are going to be basically AI agents that are going to crawl through the system. They're going to make things supposedly more efficient. They're going to make things supposedly, save a lot of money. But the biggest thing that is coming out of this is that they're planning to eliminate 70,000 federal employees. The impact on government and service and everything else that you rely on is going to be detrimentally affected by this. Even if these AI agents are amazing, and we all know AI is not that amazing yet. It's getting there. Sure, there's some interesting things that AI does, but it's not worthy of running the government yet. Not to mention the power that artificial intelligence will have over day-to-day life in America. The surveillance efforts, the combined surveillance of DOGE is terrifying. When you think about everything that they're adding together in one database, that they'll be able to track your location through your phone, your IP address. They'll be able to track your federal accounts in terms of Social Security, anything like that. They'll cross-reference that against your taxes. We've seen it already with the IRS threat now to look at nonprofits. And so they'll be able to get a picture of you as an individual that is almost complete and immediate. They'll know exactly where you are, what you're thinking, what your social media accounts are saying, how much taxes you paid, what your kids are saying. And on top of that, they're going to determine whether you qualify for federal regulations based on AI, which they will instruct. So this is a big story it's kind of getting missed because there's so much else going on. There's so much other big headliney, golden, shiny objects that people are focusing on. But really, this DOGE story continues to be the most important story, because this is the underpinning for how they will introduce authoritarian rule into America using artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence can be good, it can be bad. When you look at the people that are implementing AI in DOGE, I don't think you're looking at people that are like, operating on the highest value system. Certainly not with Elon Musk, even though he says he's leaving. The rest of the people there, there's no open transparency here. There's no oversight. Basically, this is a group of people run amok, and they're, who knows what their AI agents will be doing. So keep an eye on that story, and and where you can, please promote that story. I mentioned the semiconductor industry. A big story out of China today. Chinese smartphone giant Xiaomi has announced it will invest 50 billion yuan, that's about $6.9 billion, in the next decade to develop its own semiconductor chips. This is the first time Beijing has put up a plan basically to combat the U.S. Development of semiconductors. And it's another really big story not getting to the attention it deserves, because it's the first time there's an in-house chip being made by Xiaomi, which is a smartphone manufacturer out of Beijing. This is a big story. The war over semiconductors will be the war of the future. The country that wins that war will determine whether China or America ultimately lands up being such a huge superpower. And it makes you really understand the UAE deal I was talking about earlier on is a really challenging deal, because it involves giving them so much semiconductors. The UAE is already very close to Beijing. It's unclear whether the semiconductors we might give to the UAE, part of Donald Trump's fantastic deals in the Middle East, I'm saying that sarcastically, whether those will end up in Beijing bolstering their industry. So that's another story that really is important for people to check out. The third story is about CBS's news CEO. I can't believe that Wendy McMahon has done something so incredibly ethical and smart. And it's something I don't know Wendy McMahon. I hear good things about her, but certainly the family name has always been a burden in some ways to her reputation. But what we've seen her is she's resigned her position as the CBS News CEO. And I worked at CBS News. This is a very important position. She was responsible for bringing up all these streaming networks at CBS. And now what they've done is she's decided she's not able to continue working there because of the differences she has with the management about the way forward for CBS News. That is really code for the fact that Donald Trump is suing CBS News right now. He's suing CBS News for a report about Kamala Harris did during the elections. And what's happening now, last 2 weeks ago, CBS 60 Minutes executive producer, a guy named Bill Owens, very strong principled journalist, he resigned from his job because of this threat that's happening inside CBS News with the new corporate owners of CBS News, the ones that they're trying to buy CBS and trying to buy Paramount. They want to interfere in the actual editorial of these stories that 60 Minutes puts up, that CBS News has put up. And clearly something happened between Wendy McMahon and the managers at CBS News, or at CBS and Paramount. There was a clash, obviously, about how much influence they can have editorially. And so that is another important story, because what we're seeing is the suppression of our First Amendment rights. This is so important that we protect our press freedom, that we allow there to be a free and independent press, because that's how the truth gets out. That's how people find out what's going on. That's how people understand exactly what Donald Trump is up to. And the minute these lawsuits against all these media companies, and there's a few of them, what they're designed to do is basically create self-censorship, but also to create a suppression effect. And it really works. We've seen it in other authoritarian governments. It's one of the first things that an authoritarian government tries to do, is they try to commandeer the press. And here we're seeing it in real time. This is a very important story, because without the free press, without a free media, we will never know what's going on in America, because they intend to shut it down in terms of free and open reporting. I don't see it as being available to us consistently going forward, because of these efforts to shut down the press in the way that they're doing it. This is why things like Substack so important. This is why independent journalists are really important to support, and listen to them and find the ones you trust, because those that you trust are going to be the ones who I think are going to be able to tell you the truth going forward. I don't think you can expect the mainstream media to provide you with a free and balanced view anymore of anything, because frankly, you get a very even though there's Joe Biden story, all this, there's just so much manipulation and co-option by the media outlets. They have been basically commandeered by corporate interests, and those corporate interests, they go right back to the same people we've been talking about, to Trump, to the Russian investors, the Chinese investors, you name it. They're all over the place. I found out the other day that Sinclair Broadcasting, a big local broadcasting system, has a big stake of that is owned by the Chinese government. I mean, that seems just wrong on so many levels. One final story to tell you tonight before we leave. The cartel leaders, I mentioned this with Olga Lautman in the last hour. She brought it up in the Trump tyranny tracker. Mexico security chief has confirmed that 17 family members, 17 of the Sinaloa cartel, the family members of Ovidio Guzman Lopez, that includes El Chapo's ex-wife and daughter, are in the United States right now, and they have been allowed in under a secret agreement with the Trump administration. It's an extraordinary border crossing that doesn't really have a lot of attention in it, but again, it needs attention, because how is it possible that we're allowing 17 family members of cartel, one of the world's most renowned cartels, the Sinaloa cartel, to move to the United States? This is apparently part of a deal between Guzman and U.S. prosecutors, some sort of plea bargain. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's cooperating in the way his case is going forward. But what we're seeing is not what Donald Trump is claiming about taking all these criminals and all these gangsters and mobsters from other countries and having them leave America. They're bringing them in to America in a deal. 17 family members of the Sinaloa cartel are now inside America, thanks to Donald Trump's Department of Justice. Just a few big stories that we're following here. The 5 Stack will be back tomorrow. Hopefully, Dean's going to rejoin us by Wednesday. But if not, we'll keep trying to fill the gap without him. We miss you, Dean. I hope you're having a interesting and rewarding trip. I know this is a trip of a lifetime, but also from a reporting perspective, you're getting so much out of it. So thank you, Dean, for keeping in touch with us during these last few days, and we can't wait to have you back. My thanks to Lev Parnas, who has been just such a sport today. You know, he was on his way to a home or wherever in Brighton Beach, and I was like, he's in the car. I was like, can you step out? Can you please step out and just show us the neighborhood? And he was such a good sport about that. It's just so great to have his perspective of the place he grew up in. So, you know, just the foods and the texture of the place, the buildings. We got to learn so much about the community there and how it came together, his own history of, you know, working as a salesman for Fred Trump, selling apartments, and then that beautiful shot of the beach as he was sitting down and soaking it all in, drinking water. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much, Lev Parnas. And thank you to everyone who's watching. So appreciate your support. Thank you for being supportive of Narrative. You can become a subscriber, a free one, just by sharing your email with us at narrative.org, NARATIV.org, or you can become a paid subscriber. We really appreciate all your support, because that's really what funds all the work that we do at Narrative. I should point out that because Lev was on occasion, I took down the paywall on our main story today, which is all about Joe Biden. So check it out, because in that story is now, it's all free. You'll be able to see for at least the next couple of hours all that we found out about what's really going on with the Biden narrative right now, the attempt to ruin his legacy, but really it's an attempt to suppress any democratic uprising and dissent. So check it out at narrative, NARATIV.org. That's the show for today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a good day.